Hey everyone, Water Elemental here. I wanted to give a quick review of some of the games I've been playing during quarantine and give my thoughts and impressions, because some of them have been really great and some of them have been very bad. The first game that I've been playing is to fill my time during the usual D&D sessions that I would host. This game is Pathfinder Kingmaker. This is a turn-based or tactical RPG based around the Pathfinder rule set, first edition, not second edition. Huge distinction on that. And it is similar to games like Baldur's Gate or Divinity Original Sin. It was a Kickstarter game, and now it is available for purchase and Steam and all that stuff. As we're recording this, I have about 12 hours into the game. I have just unlocked the big mechanic of owning your own kingdom, and I have played a decent amount of it. I don't know how much I can say about the end game and middle game, so this is definitely just a first impressions of what I've currently played, so keep that in mind. The gameplay itself is very fun. The character creation is phenomenal, and probably my favorite part about this game. It has a good amount of characters that you can play with. I think I have all of the character expansions in DLC, so I have all the customizations that you can do for a brand new character. You're only able to customize yourself, you're not able to customize allies or any other party members that I have seen in the main storyline, so whoever you create is your own personal character. The main character I've been playing is a Magus, which is one of my favorite classes in Pathfinder 1.0, and they're going to be putting it in 2.0, so I don't know if it's going to get better or worse, but that is the kind of character I've been playing. So he's more of a melee caster, using touch attacks on swords and going in for quick combat. The customization is very nice, and it's very similar to playing Pathfinder. So if you have played Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, it's going to be very easy to pick up and understand what your character does. If you haven't played an RPG before and you're still interested in the game, you can go in and really look at the skills, and it will be very easy to understand what's going on. I will say that some classes are very balanced around getting a lot of skills but only using very few of them, and the Magus is one of them, so it feels like you kind of have like ability bloat, where you have a lot of stuff that just kind of sits on the shelf and you're not really able to do it. Late game, I think that's going to change based on the way characters level up in Pathfinder, but right now I feel very kind of locked into my same kind of 2 or 3 abilities and hold on to them in case there's a boss fight. Gameplay is very simple. You have 1 to 6 characters that can be into your party, and you can either be in a turn-based mode or in a live action mode. If you're in a live action mode, everything is happening simultaneously, and the AI will control all of your non-selected party members to do abilities based on what you've set the AI to do, with like a certain kind of aggro set as well as favored abilities. They're really not as good about being diverse on the abilities they use, or they will use abilities really quickly and kind of burn you out. So you have to really be careful with that if you are playing in that quick time mode. If you're playing turn-based, it's a lot slower, feels more like a tactical RPG, and it feels more like Pathfinder, where everybody has a turn, you can move them around, you have a certain amount of movement you can movement to, and you can kind of select your abilities and actions accordingly. I've been playing in QuickTime mode because I feel it's a lot faster and it's kind of a little bit more satisfying in larger encounters to just see everybody kind of mob in, and it gives you that Pathfinder feel of everybody just kind of mobbing into one area and then beating down characters of choice. And it's very crunchy is the best way to kind of describe it, where you go in there and you can just hear all the action, you hear all the spells, and go forward with that. The beginning tutorial, I think, is probably my favorite part about this game right now, because it is so good at kind of determining how a player acts and then punishes you or adjusts based on what you've done. This part is a spoiler, so if you haven't played yet, go and jump around a couple more minutes. But what happens in the tutorial is, at the very beginning, you meet an NPC, and he gives you a ring. The ring is very good, it has stats on it, and most players for their first attempt would actually put that ring on. Now, as you're playing, there's actions to do certain things like loot a certain hidden armory, or find, like hidden treasure, or help certain characters out in that process. At the end of the tutorial, your party is based on your actions, and you're actually called out for things you've done. The ring is actually a sigil for some evil corporation, and you're pinned that you are actually with the people that are attacking this castle. And if you've raided the armory, they call you out for being a thief, and that wasn't really necessary for your current goal. So you're punished and like it's really interesting because you can talk your way out of the situation based on your bluff checks and all that stuff. So you could get away with it and be like, well, no, we did that because we were under attack. We were trying to find weaponry, even though you stole everything else, like the pictures and the armor and, documents and stuff. So it's really interesting. And based on what you do, the beginning NPCs are actually split up into 2 different groups based on what you've done. And so each time you do things differently, different characters will start out with you. Eventually you can recruit, I believe, everybody that you see in the opening cinematic, as well as a few other characters. But that was a really nice touch, and I think replayability is great because now you can kind of keep that in mind. It's like, do I put the ring on? Do I go get the armory? Yeah, it's going to help me out in the long run here, but does it do this? So that was a really great game design aspect, and I think that a lot more people should kind of take that inspiration of like, your actions have consequences. Opening storyline is also very good. Characters have good voice acting. I think the characters inside of the party that I came across are also very unique. You have like the typical bard character, but she has her own backstory and reasons to be in the party. There's a very depressed cleric who loves the god of like the end times. So every time you talk to him, he's just like, it doesn't matter anymore, yada yada yada. It's not like the typical, I'm a healer, blah blah blah. There are some characters with technical tropes that can get annoying. I think there's a priest that's just a very flatlined character, but there are some really cool side characters that you can pick up along the way that have some good voice acting. Besides the actual top-down perspective, there's a couple other mechanics you can do. You can travel across your barony or your king's land and go to different areas. This is where you get to dungeons and dungeon crawls and different quest objectives, and there's a lot of exploring. It does feel a little time-consuming, and it's very stressful because you're on time limits for certain quests. So early on, I wanted to make sure I got that time limit done as quickly as possible because I thought that was going to be the last time we had that. And I didn't explore a lot of the main terrain, and that put me at a disadvantage actually in the second part when you actually own your keep, because I didn't know where quest objectives were, so I had to spend a lot more time and waste the second objective, and which was more kind of restrictive, finding parts of the quest. And I unfortunately had to turn to a guide and a map to find out where I needed to go because I didn't have time to go from area to area to area. And so I was kind of really punished for being efficient in my first section and getting that done early. But again, that comes into the replayability of the game, where if you know what you're doing, you can definitely maximize it and find certain characters ahead of time or do certain things in a certain order to kind of get your experience. You won't see everything your first time around. I have already missed NPCs, I've already missed events, and I've missed characters that could join the party because of that. So bear in mind, don't go in thinking you can complete this game 100% your first time around. The kingdom aspect, I think, is probably the weakest part of this game. I want to be dungeon crawling, I want to just delve deep into the story, but I'm constantly pulled back into this kingdom management and having to do tasks in a real-time or in-game time basis. And I think that this, sadly, the namesake of the game, is its weakest part. Now, I haven't been able to get too far into actually using this and utilizing and seeing the outcomes of it, but every time I see more pop-ups, I feel I'm overwhelmed with tasks I have to do, and I'm missing out on opportunities because I'm spending time going back to the keep, dealing with upkeep, dealing with, like monthly talks with the villagers, and doing all of the political intrigue, when my character, in my own head, as I roleplay him, is not that kind of person. He wants to be out in the field, he wants to be fighting, he wants to be finding this threat that is, bringing down the town. And the worst part is you can't keep your main character inside of the keep to do those things and then take adventuring parties out. Luckily, though, there are more than 6 characters and only 6 character slots. You're not going to have them under-leveled if you don't take them with you. Everybody levels up at the same pace. Depending on when you get them, they gain experience at the same time. So anybody that's back at the keep will still be usable later on. So you can kind of switch out party members and find that different dynamic. One thing I found that was kind of annoying was that a lot of dialogue trees really didn't go anywhere. And there's a lot of just text. There's a lot of good character background and a lot of information, but it's all given to you up front. So you can go from NPC to NPC and just go through the entire talk tree or, decision tree. And sometimes it may lead into some good information. Sometimes it will lead into more lore bits that you can go into the journal and look at. Or there's other times where it just kind of does its own, it doesn't really lead anywhere. But that's the thing about RPGs. Sometimes you just have a lot of backstory, and it's just kind of interesting to see. Inside of those talking bits, if there's any sort of important character or faction or people you want to know more about, you can actually see a different like colored text, and you can highlight over it, and you can read and understand who they're referencing. So you don't have to remember all of these different factions or people or places, as it has kind of like these cliff notes that can pop up. And I think that is another really good design, because if I stop playing for a little bit and come back in, I can just hover over them like, oh, that's the faction that does X, Y, and Z, or oh, that's the reason why we're doing X, Y, and Z. So that was a really nice way to keep up to date with kind of like the current events and stuff without having to go and slog or re-look up and take like the visual notes. Overall, I would recommend this game. There's a lot of stuff I haven't talked about, and there isn't a lot of stuff in the end game that can say as far as like if the story is satisfying, if there's branching endings, all that stuff. Like I said, I'm only about 11-12 hours into the game, but I'm really enjoying it. If you are itching to play something close to tabletop RPGs just by yourself, this is a good fill. It's really cheap on Steam, it goes on sale a lot, and I definitely think that the devs of this game have put a lot of heart and soul to make it feel as technical as Pathfinder. If you like Pathfinder, if you like Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, and you like character creation, as well as just kind of playing around with different builds, I think this game will definitely hit that spot very nicely. Check it out, Pathfinder Kingmaker, I highly recommend.